Hi there, and welcome to this day in history for November 30th. Wow, here we are at the end of November already. November 30th is the 334th day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, with 31 days remaining to the end of the year. And today we're going to begin in 1810, when American businessman and politician and founder of the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, Oliver Winchester, was born. In 1825, French painter and educator William Adolphe Bouguereau was born. He sure makes some pretty art. In 1835, Samuel Clemens, later known as Mark Twain, was born in Florida, Missouri on November 30th, 1835. He piloted boats for a couple of years until the Civil War halted steamboat traffic, and during his time as a pilot, he picked up the term Mark Twain, a boatman's call, noting that the river was only 2 fathoms deep, the minimum depth for safe navigation. When Clemens returned to writing in 1861, working for the Virginia City Territorial Enterprise, he wrote a humorous travel letter signed by Mark Twain and continued to use the pseudonym for nearly 50 years. In 1874, Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, the British leader who guided Great Britain and the Allies through the crisis of World War II, was born at Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire, England, on this date in 1874. In 1886, the Folies Bèrgere staged its first revue. They went under new management and staged the first revue-style music hall show. They featured scantily clad chorus girls, and these shows were a tremendous success. The Foley women gradually wore less and less as the 20th century approached, and the show's costumes and sets became more and more outrageous. This description of the costumes and sets reminds me of Las Vegas. How about you? Irish playwright, novelist, and poet Oscar Wilde died on this day in 1900. American television host and producer Dick Clark, who founded Dick Clark Productions, was born on this day in 1929. In 1950, President Truman refused to rule out atomic weapons. He announced during a press conference that he was prepared to authorize the use of atomic weapons in order to achieve peace in Korea. On this day in 1954, a meteorite struck an Alabama woman, the first modern instance of a meteorite striking a human being. It has happened back in history, but this was the first modern one. Crashed right through the roof of her house and into the living room, bounced off the radio, and struck her on the hip. Ow. The victim, Mrs. Elizabeth Hodges, was sleeping on the couch at the time of impact. The space rock was a sulfide meteorite weighing 8.5 pounds and measuring 7 inches in length. 7 inches. Mrs. Hodges was not permanently injured, but suffered a nasty bruise along her hip and leg. I can certainly identify with that. On this day in 1955, a young man named William Michael Albert Broad, more commonly known as Billy Idol, an English musician, singer, songwriter, and actor, was born on this day. On this day in 1965, Ralph Nader's Unsafe at Any Speed hit bookstores. He was a 32-year-old lawyer, and he published the muckraking book Unsafe at Any Speed, The Design-In Dangers of the American Automobile. The book became a bestseller right away. It also prompted the passage of the National Traffic and Motor Vehicle Safety Act of 1966, seatbelt laws in 49 states, all but New Hampshire, and a number of other roadworthy initiatives. Today, Nader is perhaps best known for his role in national politics, and in particular for the controversial role he played in the 2000 presidential election. But Unsafe at Any Speed was the book that made him famous and lent credibility to his work as a consumer advocate. In Unsafe at Any Speed, Nader railed in particular against the Chevy Corvair. Text describes it as sporty. I don't know that I would exactly. It was a cute little car with a swing axle and rear-mounted engine that was introduced in 1959. Nader argued that the car epitomized the triumph of stylistic pornography over engineering integrity. Its swing axle made the back end unstable, he said, causing it to tuck under during turns and skid or roll over much more frequently than other cars did. As it turned out, a 1972 government study vindicated the Corvair, finding it was just as safe as any other car, but Nader said that study was rigged, and the damage was done. The Corvair became an icon of dangerous, even deadly design, and the last one rolled off the assembly line in 1969. Nader went on to advocate for a number of consumer causes and has run for president 4 times. In 1974, Elton John's greatest hits reached number 1. On November 30, 1974, Elton John's greatest hits began a 10-week run atop the Billboard 200 pop album chart on his way to selling more than 24 million copies worldwide. In 1979, Pink Floyd's rock opera The Wall was released. In 1979, American actor and comedian Zeppo Marx died. In 1982, Michael Jackson's 6th solo studio album, Thriller, was released worldwide, ultimately to become the best-selling record album in history. In 1993, the Brady Bill was signed into law. During a White House ceremony attended by James S. Brady, President Bill Clinton signed the Brady Handgun Control Bill into law. The law requires a prospective handgun buyer to wait 5 business days while the authorities check on his or her background, during which time the sale is approved or prohibited based on an established set of criteria. Now, in case you aren't familiar with the background on this, it is that James Brady was the press secretary for President Ronald Reagan. They were out on an errand, and a fellow named John Hinckley Jr. tried to assassinate President Reagan. Reagan did take a bullet to his left lung, for which he had surgery, and he was able to return to work in a couple weeks. But Mr. Brady was hit in the head. His injury was so severe that he was initially pronounced dead at the hospital, but he did survive and made an impressive and lengthy recovery from this terrible injury. Now, when I use the word recovery in this case, I don't by any means mean that he healed up as good as new. Nope, not even close. He had a terrible head injury with brain damage and suffered lingering after effects, but he did live, and he was able to do things and conduct business. He promoted and pushed this law, which is named after him. In 1994, the MS Achille Lauro caught fire off the coast of Somalia. In 1995, this day was the official end of Operation Desert Storm. On this day in 1996, American singer and ukulele player Tiny Tim died. And I'm not chuckling because that's funny. I'm chuckling because he was funny. Tiny Tim. This great big guy with big crazy hair and a falsetto voice, and he would play his ukulele. It was pretty comical. 1999, Exxon and Mobil signed a $73.7 billion agreement to merge, thus creating ExxonMobil, the world's largest company. In 2007, Robert Craig Knievel, better known to us as American stunt performer and entertainer Evel Knievel, who had attempted more than 75 ramp-to-ramp motorcycle jumps, died on this date in 2007 at the age of 69. And it wasn't from a motorcycle crash either. Had breathing problems. Emphysema, I think. 2007, James Thurston Nabors was an American singer, actor, and comedian, better known to us as Jim Nabors. He performed on variety shows, movies, and TV shows, and may be best known for his portrayal as Gomer Pyle, first on The Andy Griffith Show, and then on his own spin-off, Gomer Pyle USMC. He died on this day in 2017 at the age of 87. And I think that's going to do it for us today. As always, links to my research are included in the show notes. Thank you so much for watching. Give it a like if you enjoyed this video. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. And feel free to share if you found this video interesting or informative. And while you're here, you might as well check out my other channel, 8 Susquehanna. There's a link in the show notes for that too. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Okie dokie, Smokey. Blah, 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 coffee mug. Let's try it again. Okay, do that one again, too. Okay, one more time. No, he wasn't born that day. He died that day. I'm going to have to edit this one for sure. Town whose name I have no idea how to pronounce. It's late enough in the day that we're off coffee and on fizzy water. Sometimes the thing I think is just a terrible error in pronunciation Turns out you can't even tell what was wrong with it later in the playback. All right, let's try it again.
Just read the words. Just read the words.
That's a lot of words. Hope I pronounced that right. I might have to take another look at that. I'm going to have to look at that. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? She's not a man. And this is why I don't do live shows.